Hello, everybody. I decided again to do another video instead of a live because I didn't give you guys enough heads up about a live. So I'm going to make this quick. Today is a full moon, and it's at 4 degrees and 51 minutes of Gemini. And true to form in terms of talking about what I call Nyctinastic horoscopes, where you're reflective on the astrology of the moment rather than just trying to be predictive. Because, sometimes the past is prologue, right? And so there's a way to start thinking about these things ahead. So that degree really strikes me as interesting for personal reasons, but I think also for collective reasons. First, this full moon is pretty charged. The full moon is actually along with a opposition to Mars with a square to Saturn. What that means is that one could almost feel like you're driving with the brakes on, that progress seems to be too slow, so slow. And you just feel a lot of internal and sometimes maybe even external inertia, drag, pull on you. In the human psyche, this can also manifest as some kind of depression, but it also can manifest with a very a dogged sense of purpose and perseverance, where, you really have to kind of dig in your heels and be ready to go the extra mile. So it's kind of a test of grit we can talk about as this particular time. But this full moon actually has a precedent in at least two important ways that I want you to think about and reflect on. One of them is to remember a general principle, which I've mentioned before, but I'm going to say again because I think it bears repeating. And I don't think a lot of people know this or talk about it. So any particular lunation, like a full moon, has as a precedent related to the same degree along an axis is something that happens 4 years before. So this full moon has a correlate to a new moon 4 years ago. So which means 4 years from now in 2027, there's going to be another new moon that's roughly going to be around the same degree along this axis that we have this full moon today at 4 degrees and 51 minutes of Gemini. What that means practically is that 4 years ago, on November 26th, we had a new moon at roughly 4 degrees of Sagittarius. Again, it's important to start thinking about signs along an axis. Sagittarius, Gemini, Gemini, Sagittarius, right? Taurus, Scorpio, Scorpio, Taurus, Aries, Libra, Libra, Aries. And one of the sad facts of modern life in astrology is that we astrologers have compartmentalized our astrology so much, like, just pay attention to what's happening in Aries, without acknowledging that this is something that also could resonate definitively in Libra, or when you have planets in Libra, or also in terms of Capricorn and Cancer, because they're all of a similar modality. So what this means is, if you think back to roughly the end of 2019, it gives you a window into understanding some themes that may come up per your chart for 2023. And that's because that axis is still going to be active somewhere in your chart. For me, for example, the axis is going to be along my 4th and 10th house. Now, those particular houses deal with the idea of home and being rooted, and the idea of being in career or having a public life. But it also activates my ascendant at 6 degrees of Pisces, and my descendant and my Jupiter at 4 degrees of Virgo. So this is why it's important to know your chart as well. So when I say activation, it means then that themes related to all these different points, key points in my life, are going to be activated. So this is a big kind of turning point, which was true. It was roughly around 2019 where I made a commitment to move on to leave the New York area. And that's where I began my planning and thinking of, pulling out and moving on. And that's the only thing that delayed my plans was a pandemic. So that happened in 2020. So that's one particular correlation. Another interesting thing is that I started doing work, just to give you an idea of how, I'm processing it, but maybe this is to give you a template of how you can process it, is I started working on an idea related to the lots. There's something in astrology called the lots, and they are particular calculations based on usually your ascendant and position of your sun and moon, and then other planets involved. But I started doing work related to the lot of fortune and the lot of spirit, roughly developing more ideas in 2019. And then when there was a lunar eclipse, because I haven't mentioned that yet, there's a lunar eclipse that happened May 26th, 2021, which was at 5 degrees of Sagittarius. So again, activating that axis. It was around that time I was presenting at NORWAC, and I also did a workshop on the lots, and also specifically on the daemon, which also includes a lot of spirit. So, and you're like, okay, that's cool, great. So what? Well, what's happening, and I didn't plan this, it just came from reflection, is tomorrow with the app that I'm working with, the app that's called AstroStar Live that you can find on Google Store or Apple Store. I'm going to be doing a live presentation on the lots of spirit and fortune again tomorrow. I believe it's 6 p.m. On the app. So if you download the app, you'll be able to access it. It is free to join for that particular portion of it. And and I'll get clearer on the time, but I'll be advertising that. But yes, I will be doing a presentation on the lots. And to, basically understand the lots, the lot of fortune deals with your material circumstances, both physical and financial. And so I'm going to explain more about the lot of fortune. A lot of people think, this is where I get rich. It depends on your chart. So this is where, yes, you can find some measure of where you can improve your lot in life. But it's not just about, just the experience of your wealth, but more your experience of being in a body, dealing with material form. And the lot of spirit is kind of the contrast to that, more your inner life, more in terms of how you understand things from the inside out. So I mention this again because it's a parallel to what I was doing roughly with the lunar eclipse in May 26, 2021. And then it parallels some things that were happening for me, including some ideas that were gestating. November 26th, 2019, 4 years ago, when this full moon, by degree, was more of a new moon. So think back to 4 years ago as kind of a seeding of what kind of is coming to fruition toward this full moon. And think back 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, to May 26th, when we had the lunar eclipse at that same degree. And that will give you some sense of how you might be able to cope with this full moon. Now, again, with Mars and Saturn being in the mix, it complicates matters a bit. But I still think that with a high degree of perseverance, determination, and fortitude, you can bring things to fruition. All right. Thank you, and I hope this was helpful.